The year is 1974. The global economy is choking, literally. Across Western Europe, governments have banned driving on Sundays because there is not enough fuel to go around. In the United States, cars stretch for blocks outside petrol stations. People wait for hours. Sometimes they wait and go home empty. Factories are running at half capacity. Airlines are cutting routes. In October 1973, a coalition of oil-producing Arab nations had turned off the tap. The message was political. The consequences were physical. Overnight, the fuel that powered everything, the cars, the planes, the factories, the heating, the entire engine of the modern world, became the most fought-over substance on the planet. Oil was no longer just a commodity. It was leverage. And right at the center of all of it, sitting quietly in Southeast Asia, running one of the 3 largest oil refinery complexes in the world, was a country most people in the West couldn't find on a map: Singapore, specifically BUKOM, a small island just south of the Singapore mainland, home to Shell's entire Asian refining operation. Tankers arrived through the Strait of Hormuz carrying raw crude. They left carrying refined fuel, aviation grade, diesel, marine bunker, bound for Japan, Australia, and Europe. If you flew a plane in Asia in 1974, there was a reasonable chance the fuel in its tanks had passed through BUKOM. It was not just a refinery, it was infrastructure. It was a nerve center. 2 armed political factions had been watching that island for a long time. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the PFLP, had spent years carrying out high-profile operations across the Middle East and Europe. Bold, deliberate, aimed at drawing global attention to their cause. In 1970, they hijacked 4 aircraft in a single day and held them in the Jordanian desert while the world watched. The Japanese Red Army, the JRA, had broken from Japan's radical student movement in the late 1960s and turned outward. They believed the fight against capitalism and imperialism had no borders. They were willing to go anywhere, do anything. In 1972, 3 of their members carried out one of the deadliest attacks at Lod Airport in Tel Aviv. By 1974, the 2 groups had found each other. They shared an ideology, shared resources, and shared a target list. At the top of that list, BUKOM. Their plan was not a small one. Blow the refinery, trigger a chain reaction across the fuel storage tanks, send a fireball visible from Singapore, cripple the oil supply to half of Asia, do it loudly enough that no one in London or Tokyo or Washington could pretend not to notice. On the night of January 31st, 1974, 4 men stepped off a boat onto that island, and everything that followed would test the absolute limits of a nation still learning what it was. They came by boat. 4 men, 2 Japanese nationals, 2 Arab nationals. All 4 were armed. All 4 were carrying explosives. They had studied the layout of the BUKOM refinery carefully. They knew which tanks to target, which access points were least guarded, which route gave them the best chance of reaching the storage complex without being seen. The breach was clean. No alarm, no resistance. Within minutes of coming ashore, they were at the base of the crude oil storage tanks, structures the size of 10-story buildings holding millions of gallons of refined fuel. The explosives were placed. The fuses were lit. The blast tore into the base of the tanks. Metal buckled. Flames erupted. Alarms screamed across the entire island. The explosion was enormous, visible from the Singapore mainland, but BUKOM did not shatter. The calculation had been wrong. The charges were powerful enough to rupture the exterior of the tanks, but not to ignite the catastrophic chain reaction they had planned for. The fuel did not cascade. The fire did not spread. There was no fireball rolling across the refinery. The apocalyptic disruption they had traveled across the world to cause had not materialized. What materialized instead? Sirens, floodlights. Security forces are converging from every direction. The 4 men had seconds to decide. The island was crawling with authorities. There was no prepared exit route. They ran for the pier, the only way off the island. Scanned scanning for anything that could move. They found it at the dock, a small personnel ferry, 30 feet of steel and diesel, used to shuttle refinery workers back and forth between Pulau BUKOM and the Singapore mainland. It was moored. It was unguarded. It was the only option left. Its name, painted in simple lettering on the hull, was the Laju. In Malay, Laju means fast. They stormed the deck. Warning shots were fired into the air. The 5 crew members on board, mechanics, deckhands, a ship's captain, were seized at gunpoint before they could react. The order given to the captain was simple and absolute: sail or die. But they didn't get far. Singapore police boats were already closing in. Within minutes, the Laju was surrounded, boxed in before it could escape. They knew a boat had left Pulau BUKOM. They intercepted the Laju before it could reach international waters, boxing it in at the eastern anchorage, surrounding it with armed vessels and searchlights. The Laju was stopped dead in the water. Nowhere to go, no way out. 5 innocent people trapped inside with 4 armed men who had just failed at the most important operation of their lives and who still had explosives on board. Before we continue, let me share something with you. At Red Dot Roast, everything you're watching right now, the visuals, the cinematic scenes, the editing, is powered by AI. Not basic AI, but a full system. A system that lets us create full cinematic, documentary-style videos faster, cheaper, and at a level that wasn't possible just a few years ago. Because today, the world is shifting toward AI-powered visual creation, from TV commercials to full-scale films. And because of that, this channel has been able to grow, generate income through AdSense, land sponsorships, and open up opportunities we didn't have before. So we've decided to share it with you, the exact system we use, step by step, behind the scenes as we create the videos. From finding the idea to a fully produced cinematic video using the latest AI methods. And don't worry, you won't need expensive AI tools. We'll show you secret methods on how to do this for very cheap and even completely free. After finishing the course, you'll be able to start making money with AI. You can build YouTube channels, create AI commercials for brands, build AI influencers, or even freelance and sell AI video services, and the list goes on and on. So if you want to learn how to actually use AI to create content and make money, go to studio.red.roast.com and get started. One-time payment, full access, lifetime updates. We'll see you inside. The Laju stopped. No movement, no escape. Inside, the air was thick, heat, fuel. 5 crew members, men who had come to work a normal shift, not sitting still. Across from them, 4 armed men, watching, waiting. No one speaks. Then the message comes: if anyone tries to board, everyone dies. And this time, it's real. The explosives are already set. On the water, police keep their distance. Too close, and it could trigger everything. Too far, and they lose control. On land, the government faces something it has never seen before. A young country. No clear playbook. Only one goal: keep everyone alive. Food and water were sent to the ferry in buckets. Then, through loudspeakers, the demands came in from the men. A plane, safe passage, a destination in the Middle East. On shore, the government listened and replied calmly: we won't be forced into a decision, but we won't risk lives either. But time isn't helping. Hours turn into days. Inside the ferry, people are getting tired. Less sleep, more tension. And in a situation like this, one mistake is enough. Then, everything changes. 6 days into the standoff, February 6th, far from Singapore, another crisis begins. A group storms the Japanese embassy in Kuwait. Hostages are taken, and a demand is made. Release the men on the Laju. Give them a plane. Send them to the Middle East. This isn't just local, it's global. Governments step in. Japan provides the aircraft. Kuwait agrees to receive it. Back on the Laju, an agreement starts to form. The crew would be released. The men would leave. And it seemed this might finally be over. But there's one problem. The men on board don't trust it. They believe the moment they step off the ferry, everything could turn against them. So they ask for something more. Proof. They want people from the Singapore government on the plane with them, in the same cabin, for the entire flight. No officials on board, no deal. Now the decision changes. This is no longer about negotiation. This is a trade, and someone has to say yes. Government officials on the plane with armed men. No guarantee of coming back. For a moment, no one spoke. Then one man stepped forward. S.R. Nathan, who was leading Singapore's security and intelligence operations at the time, later became the president of Singapore. No hesitation. He gathered a team of 12 officials, security officers. He told them everything. Then he gave one instruction: go home. Say what you need to say. Be back tomorrow. The next morning, all 12 returned, including Nathan himself. February 8, 1974, Paya Lebar Air Base. The exchange begins. The crew from the Laju walk free. 8 days, finally over. At the same time, Nathan and his team walk forward, up the stairs, into the aircraft. The doors close, the engines start, and just like that, they're inside, with armed men. Inside the cabin, no one speaks. Hours pass. Every second feels longer than the last, because everyone knows this could still go wrong. The plane lands in Kuwait, but nothing moves. The doors stay shut. Authorities hesitate. Another negotiation begins, this time face to face. The aircraft sits on the runway. Then finally, a decision. The men step off. They surrender. At the same time, the hostages in Kuwait are released. Just like that, it's over. Nathan and his team stay on the plane. They fly home, quietly. No celebration, no headlines, just back to normal. But something had changed. Singapore had faced a crisis with no clear solution, no experience, no guarantees, and still it held. The refinery at Pulau BUKOM kept running. The Laju returned to service. Life moved on, but the world didn't. Even today, conflicts far away can shake the same system. The tensions involving Israel, Iran, and the United States to threats around the Strait of Hormuz, one narrow passage, still carries a huge share of the world's oil. And when that route is at risk, the impact is felt everywhere, just like in 1974. Because sometimes history doesn't repeat, it echoes. It starts quietly, then suddenly everything is at risk. And when it's over, the world just moves on, like nothing happened.